Hi guys, Richard from SharpshootingUK here. I've been mulling over this for a couple of years and I'm finally confident of everything. What we're talking about is what I'm calling bullet coating for the 21st century. A lot of people have experimented with Moly, both coating the bore and coating the bullet. It's been marketed as all manner of rubbish, you know, guaranteed accuracy improvements, etc., etc. For me, the fundamental point to bullet coating is not anything to do with velocity, not anything to do with accuracy, certainly. The key for me is consistency. Perhaps peripherally you might get reduced barrel wear, which is obviously attractive, and certainly reduced cleaning intervals, which is also useful. So let's break it down and see what I've found using some of the more modern coatings. First off, we have to discuss Moly. As I say, it was the major coating, and it was and remains to a certain extent very popular. You're talking about reduced cleaning intervals, and that helps. However, there were downsides to Moly that probably, frankly, outweighed the positives. So then things evolved through Danzak and such like. The latest one I'm using, I want to talk about, is Boron Nitride, hexagonal boron nitride, Hbn. Now this stuff has long been used in industry. It's well known for extreme temperature resistance and low toxicity. It is used on the hinges and chains of commercial ovens that run 3,000 degrees 24 hours a day. How are you supposed to lube that? You're not going to use a bit of 3-in-1. You need something that's got magnificent heat resistance. With regard to suitability for purpose, engineering-wise, chemically, I think I'm right in saying that Moly burns off at 600 degrees. So that means that you're basically going to be toasting this molybdenum into your barrel. And you hear stories about, you know, it being really hard to get out. It's toasted on there, okay? Because your flame is certainly more than 600 degrees. Now, Hbn burns off at 2600 degrees. That is way, way above the temperature at which steel melts. So you're talking about this stuff lining your throat, lining the barrel, lining the lands, and when the gun goes off, it just stays there acting as a lubricant, shot after shot. Which also means if you want to get it out, you just flush it out, because it's not burnt on. It does not burn when your gun fires. And that for me is a fundamental difference. You can't use a lubricant in an environment where it burns off. The thing with the Hbn is that you're shot peening it on through tumbling and vibration onto the case. And then it sits in the pores of the metal, and that's plenty. It doesn't matter if you kind of rub it off, there's still enough. Well, this is microns in size, this stuff. All you're really looking at here is the excess lying on the surface. The real important bit is that it's tucked into the pores of the metal, and it makes it really slippery. Whereas Moly is like a surface coating, like a wax, and it just sits on top, and it's just much harder to live with, much messier. So enough of that, we'll get back to that. What I have found, and David Tubb, who sells Hbn in the US, is that what you're really looking at is improvements in your feet per second extreme spreads, your speed consistency, on cold bore and warm bore. You imagine when you first take your gun out, the barrel is cold. That shot at 1,000 yards could be a long way low, because it could be 70, 80 feet per second slower. And then the barrel warms up a bit and your speeds come up and away you go. Likewise, you shoot a string of shots in competition, 10, 15 shots, and come to the next string after a few minutes. And what's your velocity? Is it a bit low? Is it a lot low? Is your barrel cold? Is it warm? Those are the things that coatings solve. I've done a lot of measurements in, 4 calibers over a couple of years. And what I found is that my cold bore shot is about 15 feet per second slow now. And the figure we used to use was 75. That in itself is a massive thing. I thought I was going to have to redevelop the load in each gun from scratch. No, all I found in all the calibers was that I lost speed, I put more powder in, got back where I was, and the gun behaved exactly as it did before. Really no difference. So it wasn't a big deal. But then I'd found on a great deal of number crunching testing that my cold bore, warm bore shots were much closer to the group, which is the real boon here. I have some anecdotal evidence from someone who ran a barrel and then ran exactly the same barrel again in exactly the same usage, and he found he got a third more shots when he coated with Hbn than in the barrel that ran naked. And that makes sense to me. I think that, lubing the throat and the lands and protecting it from the flame, because this stuff's a lubricant, right? But it's also kind of flame proof. If you coat the barrel in something that doesn't burn off, you are inherently protecting it somewhat. And I think that must help. I haven't shot any barrels out while using Hbn, although I'm well on the way. But I think expecting somewhat more barrel life makes sense. I can't imagine it's going to make it worse. I can imagine it's going to make it better. So that's worth having. As is the not having to clean. That is tremendously useful because it just saves so much time. You just bore snake and away you go. I don't think that you have to clean very often in a match barrel, actually, with naked bullets. I think you can probably go hundreds of rounds. But it is absolutely my experience that you will end up with a carbon ring. And that was my concern when I started going hundreds of shots without cleaning in my rifles running Hbn. That, okay, we might not be fouling so much, we might not be getting this and that, but surely we're going to get this carbon ring. And I would imagine that would normally take a couple of hundred rounds to develop without proper cleaning. I'm pleased to say that, I'm well past that, and in several calibers, and I'm not seeing any evidence of carbon rings causing me problems. So I really do think that the lubricity of the barrel is enabling the carbon and anything that would look to cool and stick in the barrel to just bead and roll down like you get in a shotgun. You just get all those little flecks and they just kind of push out the end of the barrel. One thing that's really worth mentioning on the cleaning front is that my match barrels didn't take a lot of cleaning anyway. They would swab out using KG1 carbon remover in 3 patches, black, grey, clean, pretty much all the time. But I did use the Hbn on my 1.7 Fireball, which was a hell of a good gun, hell of an accurate barrel, but it was a factory barrel, and they are a lot rougher inside than a match barrel. It's like a massive difference. It's like comparing a polished mirror to a ploughed field. And as good as the tube was, it took 15 patches to get the carbon out. after I'd shot it. Didn't lay a lot of copper down, no problems there, but it did get mucky. When I ran the Hbn through that gun and the others, you know, barely needed clean, same as before, as I've discussed. But the fireball barrel, which, as I say, used to take a dozen black patches to clean out, was clean in one more than the match barrels. It would clean in 4 or 5 patches. You know, black, black, grey, grey, done. And that was very, very much different to before the Hbn. So they use Hbn in makeup as well. It's very uniform and it fills in pores and imperfections. They use it in foundation. And obviously I've tested that thoroughly and I look lovely. But more importantly, I imagine that it would fill in the imperfections in that rougher barrel really well and make it smoother and be, as it were, doubly effective over a match barrel, because there are less imperfections to fill in, less pores and scraping and tool marks in the steel. So yeah, the evidence for the cleaning side of things in a factory barrel, and you know, most people in the world shoot factory barrels, is that it is a monumental improvement. So that's really worth bearing in mind. So you're looking at ease of use here. You know, you come off the hill and you've shot loads of rounds in loads of calibers. You know, not having to properly scrub them all out is a real advantage. You just bore snake and stick them in the cabinet, and you know that the next shot's going to be 15 feet per second low instead of 75. But yeah, there's your main advantages of your Hbn. It's easy to apply. You just tumble it. I'll show you some pictures of that process now. Basically in a jam jar, thimble full of, well, not a thimble full, a tiny little spoon, I'll show you the size, of Hbn powder on the bullets, which you've degreased with washing liquid and dried. Tumble for, I use 3 hours. Sieve off the excess. You're left with a satin coloured bullet. You don't have to be particularly careful with it because it's in the pores of the metal. Load that as normal and your first shot won't be low, and that is that's really useful. Your cleaning regimen is completely changed. You don't have to worry about getting the carbon off your barrels, getting the copper out, because it just doesn't happen. I think the extreme spreads in normal shooting, not just the first shot, but the extreme spreads generally are somewhat improved. I can't really prove it, but I think it's improved my figures a bit. So every little helps, as they say. You're looking at reducing the pressure by perhaps 5%. That's the figure that's thrown about. It doesn't matter what it is, but let's call it 5%. But the speed, your feet per second, only reduces, say, 3%. So logically, what you can do is, once you've lubed, now we're talking about Hbn here, but it doesn't really matter, but once you've lubed by whatever means you lube, you could then increase the pressure back to where it was, and you will have gained some speed at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong, lubrication does not make your barrel faster. It makes it slower. But it reduces the pressure more than the feet per second. So you take the pressure back up and you will have a bit more speed. Now, for me, having developed my load very carefully, I didn't want to start messing about going higher. You know, I knew where my node was, that's where I wanted to be, and I just pushed back to that speed and I was happy. But it is interesting, if you've got a caliber, say you need to get around, it only starts going well and accurately at 3K or 2900, whatever, and you can't quite get there normally without pressure sides, your HBN is going to get you that last 30 or 40 feet per second. And that is another useful thing to use it for. Okay, because your pressure is reduced by more than the feet per second is reduced. So you are able to extract a bit more speed if that's what you need to do. Bore prep. What I do there is I clean the barrel out so it's squeaky clean. Maybe even use a bit of JB bore paste, just get it, you know, squeaky clean. Dissolve in isopropyl alcohol, or should I say suspend to be technically correct. Swab through, isopropyl alcohol evaporates, and your bore is coated with the HBN. You'll do a 1.7 barrel in a single patch. A 7mm or, you know, a 7.62 barrel, you might have to put 3 or 4 big patches through. So from the top, your advantages are easy to apply if you've got a tumbler. You just put a bit in a pot of jam or you know, something with a good sealed lid, tape it up, whack it in your tumbler, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, whatever, sieve off the excess, and you've got a coated bullet. You then chrony that. If you've got a chronograph, you will have lost some feet per second. You put perhaps 0.2, 0.3 of a grain more powder in, that will get you back where you were, and then your gun behaves as it used to. No major trial. If you decide to stop using it, then you can switch to naked bullets and it just settles back down. Clean it out, give it a good clean, and you're back to where you were. This is not going to gum up the works at all. You're then looking at increased barrel life, perhaps, massively increased cleaning intervals, which is convenient, and your first shot and your warm shots and any in-between strings of shots is going to be a bit low in feet per second rather than a lot. The figure I've got is 15 feet per second low rather than 75 in my big guns. That is absolutely golden. You're on the hill vomiting, you're shooting 700-800 yards where 50-60 feet per second is certainly a missed rabbit. You shoot for 5, 6, 7 shots, and then you wait in the cold for 20 minutes till your next shot. What's your feet per second going to be? You know, this stuff evens that out, and therefore it is something that I will use from this day forth. There are no downsides at all, in my opinion, and I've been using this for probably 10,000 rounds in 4 calibers, is it? So I can't find anything to stop me recommending this across the board. I think this new spray makes the bore prep a bit easier, in that you can just squirt some of this down the barrel and then, you know, that's the barrel prepped. Well, first off, I got my previous HBN from David Tubb, who is a big proponent of it in the States. He's won many championships in many different disciplines in the States. And the competition's harsh out there, you know, so fair play to him. And he has pioneered this. I've just sort of followed him in, really, for the UK. In the US, he's been talking about, you know, that first shot flyer, cold bore, fouling shots, all being relegated to the sidelines by using HBN. And I was just simply intrigued by that and tested that and confirmed that myself. But he's the guy who's pushed this. I'd like to thank Sniper's Hide Forum, which is where I discovered the bore swabbing technique. But when I ran out of HBN, I went to get some more, and they no longer export it. So I had to look in the UK, and a very helpful guy, Mr. Randall at Precision Ceramics in the UK, provided me with this HBN. And he has developed a size, a compound of it that he feels is best for barrel usage, and that's what I use. He's also sent me this, which is an industrial Hbn spray. Now, that might be useful for applying to the throat rather than the swabbing technique. Probably easier. And it's feasible that you could spray this carefully on rimfire bullets that you can't reload and you can't tumble. So watch this space on that front. But yeah, Precision Ceramics in the UK is where you want to get your Hbn from. It's not very expensive. I think they do a little pot of it for, is it 30 quid, and you can reload probably 5,000 bullets with that. So the compound is not expensive. I don't know about the spray, that may be more, but speak to them. They're really good. I'll put a link in the description.